Greetings everyone, Baldus here. In this video, I'm going over my first endgame Druid guide for Season 2. This time we are starting off with Lightning Storm, and it's once again a really strong skill with insane clear damage and survivability for T100 Nightmares, and also versatile enough for all the content this season. It's hard to think of another skill that compares to this for speed clearing Helltides and Vampire areas. And with the new boss items introduced, it's really important you have an easy time doing them. Paired with some of the new vampire powers, such as Anticipation and Undying, we are able to have 100% uptime on our ultimates and crazy healing sustain while casting our spells. Even with the nerfs to Grizzly Rage, we are still taking it as our preferred choice since it gives us the most damage and resource management to maximize our clear. Cataclysm paired with a similar setup is still a great option, giving us lots of lucky hit procs and greater single target, however does suffer with spirit issues in certain scenarios. Overall, this is a really fun and strong build to try out this season, and I hope you all enjoy it. I'll let the gameplay play out, and I'll be back with the gear setup, vampire powers, and more. Welcome back everyone. So to start, I just want to mention that everything I talk about here will be in the default builder, which will be in the description below. So if you don't want to listen to the audio, just have a look in there and then you can follow everything, including the gear, stats, skill tree, Paragon Board, and then there'll be some notes in the notes section as well. So to begin here, of course, we still do need Tempest Roar for this kind of build. However, in this season, it's much easier to get. Additionally, Mad Wolf's Glee, a really good chest in this season. It had some changes where they took away the poison damage and physical damage, and they switched into maximum life and just true damage, which is a really high stat, going up to 35.3%. And then we also get the +3 ranks to our werewolf skills, and now because Tempest Roar makes our storm skills werewolf, we're able to achieve 12 ranks in Lightning Storm. Moving on to the gloves, we're going to want 4 ranks of Lightning Storm. That's the #1 priority on the gloves. And then lucky hit chance is really good to proc all our lightning bolts, etc. And then crit chance is good, and then another damage stat, a crit damage with lightning or damage to injured enemies, quite good for bosses. Also on the gloves, we're going to be taking the Mighty Storm aspect, which makes Earth and Might key passive also apply to our storm skills. So instead of using Earth, we can use lightning now to proc the 100% crit chance and resource generation. Moving on to the pants, we're going to be taking the Disobedience aspect. This scales our armor really well when we do damage. So we're getting pretty much capped physical damage taken when we have Disobedience at max ranks. Stats on here, #1 stat for me is damage reduction while injured. That's just a really good DR stat in this game. Additionally, maximum life is a really good stat here because we are stacking quite a nice bit of life with this build. Other stats here, willpower, all stats good. You could also get another damage reduction while fortified, or damage reduction against poison enemies. They're the other two really good ones. For the boots, again, damage reduction while injured, like I said before, pretty nice. And then total armor, werewolf form, really good just to keep our armor nice and high. Also, we have the aspect here, which just helps a bit of crowd control in tight situations. So when there's 5 close enemies, we can stun them for 4 seconds. Just gives us a really nice advantage against like a pack of elites or something, because we can just stun them and then they don't deal any damage to us. For the weapon, just purely because of the stats on this weapon, I have got a mace. However, a one-handed axe will be better. Just healthy damage is better than overpowered damage for Lightning Storm, as channeling skills can't overpower. However, all the lightning bolts and stuff like that can overpower. So you're still getting a bit of value, but it's minimal, so don't worry too much. The most important thing about the weapon is the stats. So on this, I've got crit strike damage, vulnerable damage, or skill damage, damage to close enemies. Just like to mention quickly about damage to close enemies and distant enemies. Because of the new Thunderstruck passive we have, now that it's changed, these modifiers are really strong, as it provides us with multiplicative damage when we add all our close damage and distant damage on the gear. I'll talk more about that when we get into the Paragon Board. Also, I've got the Lightning Dancers aspect. Moving on to the necklace, we are running Retaliation. This is really good for Lightning Storm this season because we can get Fortify much easier through a Vampire Power. And this gives us a really big damage bonus. I've also got movement speed, storm skill damage, and some more armor down reduction. There's a lot of good stats that we can get on the necklace, so just try and find some things that obviously synergize with the build. For the first ring, we are taking Rune Workers, really strong this season as we get the new Electrocute glyph that was introduced. So this scales our bolt damage, so we get some pretty high numbers. Additionally, for the stats, lightning damage, lightning crit damage, vulnerable damage, and then of course damage to close, all really good stats. Then for the second ring, we are going Rampaging Werebeast. This is still the best after testing. I did test Cataclysm with this build, but Rampaging Werebeast and Grizzly Rage just pair together still really well, although the crit damage bonus has been reduced. But it's still really good damage and clear speed. And then you also get the duration. So on this ring, we've got a bit more crit chance and lucky hit chance instead of pure damage. And then we've also got lightning, crit damage, and distant enemies. So again, the distant enemies, you can combine both close and distant with this kind of build. Lightning Storm kind of, sometimes you're close, sometimes you're distant, so you get value from both. And then of course, it synergizes with the Thunderstruck legendary node. With the totem, we've gone with Direwolves, of course. You need this when you're running Grizzly Rage, because this makes it turn into a Dire Werewolf and then synergizes with our Tempest Roar and Mad Wolf's Glee. We also gain movement speed and spirit cost reduction, and then we also get heals every kill, which is actually a really significant heal. And with the vampire powers, we can get pretty much 100% uptime on Grizzly Rage this season, so increases the value a lot. Good stats on the totem. This one doesn't have the best, but we do have a crit strike chance and damage reduction while fortified. They're really good ones. You could also find lucky hit chance and down reduction. Okay, moving on to the spirit boons quickly. So of course we're still going with wariness for the reduced damage from elite. For the second row, I've gone with the crit strike damage, but you can go with the maximum life. 14% is quite significant. So we see we have 20k here. We use this. We go up to 22.6k, so it's giving us another 2.6k, which is quite nice. But I found I didn't really need as much more max health, so I've just gone with more damage. For the third row, I've gone with Calamity. So this extends the duration of ultimate skills, so that's just longer Grizzly Rage time, which synergizes with our like cooldown reduction, so we can get it off cooldown by the time it's done. If you're running Flicker Step, you don't need to run this, and you don't need to run Calm Before the Storm either. So you can put your Spirit Boons into something like Crit Strike Chance, or even Energize for more Spirit. but with this version, we are running this. We're running Overload and Calm Before the Storm just to make sure we have that Grizzly Rage uptime. For the skill tree, I'll just go over this quickly, just key points. Go into Storm Strike for our auto attack, mainly for the DR. 15% damage reduction for 3 seconds when we do it. We don't need to take the vulnerable because we're applying that through Exploit for mobs and then Cursed Touch for bosses. So of course, Lightning Storm, get some Wild Impulse damage here. Few changes here because of the elemental res. We want to take 3 points into here because resistances are important now. Another 3 here for more damage reduction when we use a defensive skill. So we got 2 defensive skills, so we have this up pretty much all the time. Just want to mention quickly about elemental resistance before I move on. So stat page, I mean, with this build, I have managed to achieve like 2 cap reses and just a few slightly off. And you can use like essences and stuff to increase. I don't have one in here, but you can use essences to cap everything else if you really need it. But I found you don't need it, really. You know, if you've got 60% plus with this kind of build, you aren't taking crazy amounts of damage or getting one shot unless you stand in stuff. So it seemed to be fine. Just a few more pointers. Obviously, we're going Grizzly Rage, and we are taking this time all the charge atmospheres because of how Lightning Bolt scales in this season. Before we wouldn't really take this, but now we will. We only need 1 point into Endless Tempest because we're not using Cataclysm now. We are still using Hurricane, but it's only 1 second, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter too much. We are still taking Envenom because it is bonus crit strike damage against poison enemies, and we always poison enemies with crits with Toxic Claws. Then we get the slow as well, so we apply the CC. Then we got Circle of Life for heal, or every time it consumes spirit. So this is really good for Lightning Storm, because every time it ticks, we are getting that 3% heal. I will also talk about the vampire powers now, and how that synergizes quickly. So Undying, this is synergizing with the one I just mentioned. So casting skills heals you for 3% life, and then double this bonus while below 50% life. So when we are below 50%, we're getting 9% healing every time we use Lightning Storm. So that's some really good healing, because you combine the 6% with the Circle of Life, and we get 9%. So we can heal really well with this. 1 point to note that's really important is this heal on Undying only procs on the very first tick of Lightning Storm. If you hold it down, it won't tick. However, if you've played Lightning Storm before, you should be getting used to spam clicking the skill instead of holding it down. So we do. That's just something to note. If you are just holding it down, you will only get the heal on the first tick. Okay, moving on. We are taking Prey on the Weak. This gives us 16% multiplicative increased damage to vulnerable enemies. And then when we have a Cursed Touch, we also apply Vulnerable. So for this kind of build, because Exploit only does the 3 seconds every 20 seconds, we do swap in a Cursed Touch, if I can find it. We take this out for bosses because we don't need the healing from Undying. And then we put this on to apply the Vampiric Curse. So we always have 100% uptime on bosses. We're also taking Sanguine Brace, which is Fortify every kill. And then we gain 8% crit chance when we have half Fortify. Crazy easy to get max Fortify with this build. So we are getting some from Grizzly Rage as well. And then every kill, we get 6%. So that's why I said it synergizes really well with Retaliation this season. Moving on, we are taking Anticipation. This reduces our ultimate skills cooldown by 20%, so we can maintain that Grizzly Rage uptime. Additionally, you do get the ultimate skill damage, but this doesn't matter for using Grizzly Rage because it doesn't do damage. Whereas for Cataclysm, with this build, you can get some nice ultimate damage. Because every time we poison an enemy around us, that's going to scale the Cataclysm damage. And then finally, we have Bathe in Blood. So this is the channeling pool, which gives us 40% multiplicative, and then also 30% damage reduction. So when we're fighting elites and bosses, we can literally just stand still, plant ourselves in the ground with this pool, and just out heal any damage we take, and also deal greater damage as well. Really, really good vampire power. I mean, some things do require movement, so you won't be standing in it all the time, like getting out of exploding poison and, you know, some of the nightmare dungeon affixes. You've got to move, but most of the time when we need it, it's a good one to have. Okay, finally we will move on to the Paragon Board. I won't go over every node, but we'll talk about the glyphs mainly. So in the first area, we've gone with Fulminate, which just increases our lightning damage, and then we deal 12% multiplicative against healthy and injured enemies. So moving on to the second node, this second board, this is going to be Thunderstruck. So this is what I was mentioning before about how Thunderstruck's change now. So Storm skills deal increased damage equal to 20% of your damage versus close and damage versus distant bonuses. So both close and distance combine with this, so you don't just need you can't just have just close, you could also have distance and it will apply on top of the close. So currently I've got a 35% X bonus on this, and that's multiplicative damage, so it's a really, really good node. And I'll talk about another glyph shortly, but in this one we are running Earth and Sky, which gives the bonus to the magic nodes. So we still want the damage reduction from vulnerable enemies, and then storm skill damage. Moving on to the third board in the Paragon, we are taking Constricting Tendrils. However, we're just taking it for the board because we want some of these nodes for maximum life, because we are scaling life. But in this board, we are taking Electrocution. So this is the new glyph that scales our lightning bolts and dancing bolts. So like I said, rune workers and lightning dancers, this is where this scales, and then a few of the skills in the skill tree. So we can, as you can see, we can get some really, really big additive damage here. So we're almost going up to 500% at the max glyph. Additionally, from here, we're just moving to get like maximum life nodes, because we do need that for survivability. For the fourth board, we are taking Heightened Malice. So this gives us 45% multiplicative when 3 or more poison enemies are nearby. Just really good for clear, so nightmare dungeons, killing elites and all of that. Really, really good. We're also gaining a bit of poison resist, which helps with our resistances, maximum life, and then damage to poison enemies. So for this one, we're going to take Territorial. So this is what I'm saying about how the close damage scales. So we have 77.2% damage versus close enemies, and that gives us 35% current bonus. If we take this off quickly, this bonus goes down to 20%. So this alone, just having this gives us 15% more multiplicative, just having that. And then obviously on top of the damage to close enemies, and we get the damage reduction. So really, really good. You really want this in any of your storm builds, because it scales the damage a lot. For the final board, we're taking Lust for Carnage. We need this for our spirit regen, so we gain 2 spirit every crit strike. Werewolf skills, so Lightning Storm becomes a werewolf skill with Tempest Roar. For the glyph here, we're taking Exploit. So with the bonus, this gives us vulnerable on enemies for 3 seconds, but only every 20 seconds. So this is mainly used for clearing, because we tend to kill most mobs within 3 seconds. So we do apply that vulnerable. Then we also get a bit of vulnerable damage as well. So that is it for the Paragon board, and that is it for the build. Really, really strong again this season, especially for nightmare dungeons. Of course, as always, single target isn't the best, especially on smaller bosses, because the lightning strikes don't hit all the hitbox. However, on big bosses like world bosses, Duriel and stuff, we do get some nice damage there. But that's generally the only weakness of this build. Like I said before, it's really versatile, great clear for Hell Tides, Vampire Zones, and then of course easy T100 Nightmares, which you might want to do this season. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure to check me out on Twitch. I'm streaming every day, pretty much. And we'll be going for the Uber Uniques this season. Try get all of them. So come and hang out there if you want to find out about Druid stuff. But thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.